right?
Yeah.
Um, No Time to Die, the newest one, the one that
Okay.
maybe the biggest spoiler warning for everybody.
Before we get into it, I just have to
Okay.
say I can make no promises that I will not at some point call this No Time to Kill.
Okay.
So, if I do, please know I still mean No Time to Die.
Okay. All right. I will know what you mean. No
Thank
Time to
you.
Die, the 25th entry in the Bond franchise, directed by Kerry Joji Fukunaga,
Mhm,
68 Metacritic score, took in 774 million, so
mhm,
less than the previous entry, the second most for a film, I believe, from 2021.
mhm.
And I hope that this is still in some second run theaters or whatever.
Sure.
And then there is that supposed to be limited re-release in IMAX today.
Right.
So hopefully that's available somewhere. I'm I'm hoping that this movie can creep up a little further yet. Um, what do you think of it?
I really enjoyed it, actually. I think part of the enjoyment for me was start to finish knowing this movie was a swan song for Daniel Craig, and it
Mm,
really felt like it was a platform designed for that. And so I felt like a lot of the pressure for me was taken off, where I could just like sit back and enjoy Daniel Craig as Bond, like enjoy some fan servicey things to sort of like, do a little head nod to different parts of his tenure as Bond and not have to worry too much about plot. But in the end, the plot surprised me for being stronger than I thought it was going to be.
sure.
So like
Yeah.
there I was pleasantly surprised at like, hey, this is like a plot I think I actually care about. It's a good story. It's not maybe um the most grounded in reality that, Bond has ever been, but like it's a credible threat. It's immediate. It makes sense where everything is coming from. And I think the only real major drawback for me was Rami Malek. His
Okay.
villain um just didn't have a lot going for him. He was so interesting as a concept, but I don't think he was given enough to do.
Okay.
I I mean, maybe it was like Remy Malek's acting choices, I don't know, but I just didn't really feel threatened by him.
Okay. All right. Sure. Um, yeah, again, this is the first Bond film in a long time that I didn't see right away in theaters, basically.
Mhm.
And I've expressed before being very disheartened at sort of the early press and the weird like
Mhm.
roller coaster ride of a release cycle,
Yes.
stop, start kind of thing. Um, it was it was pretty, and then my disappointment in the last film. I think if I had
Mhm.
really loved the last film, I think I could have weathered those ups and downs better. But I really wasn't super anxious to see this, sadly, as a big Bond fan.
Mhm.
So when I got to watch it, I was pleasantly surprised. I really liked it. I thought it was very well done.
Mhm.
I'd never heard of this director. It's very young.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't have a lot of complaints. um, things I it does You're right, it does feel like there's a lot of appreciation for the past, a lot of head nods and stuff like that. There is a portrait at one point of previous M in the hallway. That's great.
Mhm.
I kept getting theme song notes from other Bond films throughout the
Mhm.
film. I'd be like, I
Mhm.
can't quite place which one that's from, but it's
Mhm.
being used here. So I appreciate Hans Zimmer's effort in that. And the film
Yep.
actually wraps up with just straight a song from a different Bond film.
Mhm, it
Um,
does.
so I think that's cool as well. Um, Motif. What's that, Alan? Am I missing something? I'm out of the loop here. Um, there is let's see.
Yeah, it's a
s-
yep,
Oh, dominant recurring theme. Okay. Okay. Yeah,
yep.
it's
It's like what you associate, like, with, it's like a musical passage that you associate, like, Darth Vader.
yeah.
Do you immediately hear music in your head?
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
Jaws or whatever. Yep.
Yep,
Mhm.
exactly. So, like, it's a basically a musical association. Yep.
Yep. I mean, how do you see a shark and not think those few
Dun-dun.
notes? Yeah. So, yeah, I think Bond films are known for their crazy openings and had a good opening shot, like scene. It was just the way the camera worked on it and stuff. Again, keeping up some of the cinematography values there. Um, we have all the time in the world using that line. I wrote that
Mhm.
one down. Um, let's see what else I like. And they had I liked seeing Felix back, and I thought it was kind of a
I
good
did
comedic
too.
relief to have that annoying guy they called the Book of Mormon, whoever. That was
Oh, Logan
fun seeing
Ash?
him. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Um, I was proud of myself. I was looking at the phones in this film. And it's like, okay, what kind of phone is this? Because Sony doesn't have anything to do with these films now. This
Mhm.
film has nothing to do with Sony. And it's like, is it Nokia or Motorola? And then later they showed it was Nokia, so I was happy about that. Um, he had lots of puns in here,
Mhm.
puns galore. So yeah, I liked a lot. It was emotional. Again, Leah Sado being back, wrapping up that story. I thought they started the movie off emotionally.
Mhm.
Having that split was pretty powerful, and then it gave a lot of weight to Billie Eilish's song as well.
Yes.
Like when that credit sequence started to roll, and we had that theme, it meant a lot more all of a sudden.
Mhm.
So it elevated the theme for me.
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
Billie Eilish did a really great job. I actually really loved the theme song for this movie.
Mhm.
I wasn't sure I was going to, and then, like you said, it really fit tonally with the film. Um, yeah, really enjoyed the credits. I do have to say, I don't know that we mentioned this, but I did love, like, the film's opening sequence being about Madeline Swan rather than James Bond.
Sure.
It was
Yeah.
cool. It was a fun way to, like, introduce a villain for a film, um, and introduce, like, how important another character was gonna be in this film. And
Yep.
again, I thought, like, beautifully shot. Like,
Yep.
cinematography was just, like, on point.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. There was a really good I love the focus on the cars. Callbacks
Mhm,
again to there's a older V8 saloon Aston Martin that's I guess a callback to one from The Living Daylights, Timothy Dalton film. The DB5, the car chases were really well done. They're very frenetic.
mhm.
I bought them. It was a right amount of I don't know, the tension when the car's just getting shot at, and Bond's like sitting there like, am I going to I have another person that I feel has betrayed me, love of my
Right,
life. Like I've let someone in
right,
again. Am I just gonna let him bust through?
right.
Do I just
Like,
let it happen?
maybe.
Yeah. And so I liked that drama. I like that we
Mhm.
get you know, it's very sad with Felix.
Oof,
Um,
yeah, that was rough.
so is like a lot they managed to do the things that I think they've done best in the Daniel Craig time as Bond and make it emotional. Make
Mhm,
there be a meaning things, make there be a weight.
mhm,
And I think that this film really brought that back when the last one was missing it.
mhm. Yeah, I think there could have been a weariness in this film at using Bond has retired again, and now
Yes.
we're, like, somehow bringing him back for service, and this film managed to skirt that really well, like, with the
Mhm.
emotional weight of Madeline's potential betrayal, like, you really felt that, um, and, like, you know, Felix being the one to draw Bond back
Yep.
in instead of, like, MI6 coming after him. I think there was really clever ways of, you know, tugging at our heartstrings in one direction about, oh, we thought, he was riding off into a happily ever after. There's now a betrayal. We can't let it sit too long though. And now, oh, look, we have another old friend coming back, drawing Bond in, and we need like a distraction from this betrayal. Really well done.
Yep.
Like nods
Yep.
to Bond's past and also using a familiar trope, but in a better way.
Yep. And then we get a really fun, I love the sequence in Cuba. And I think
Mhm.
that the Bond girl we meet here is a lot of fun. She has
Yes.
a spice of personality that is, it's almost like a callback to ditzy Bond girl of some other films, but then she's like super capable. So it's
Yes.
just she's just fun. She's
Yes.
fun to watch, and
And
their
this film needs
interactions
that.
together are good. Yeah, it needed that brevity, and
Yep.
this provided that. So, and then it got dark. We're just like skin is
Right.
bubbling and stuff. But yeah.
Right, no, but I mean but like you said, we needed that break for a little bit because we went through a lot of heavy things in very short order, and we needed some lightness, we needed some fun, we needed some good old-fashioned James Bond dressing up, going to a party, you
Yep.
know, having a sexy Bond girl with him. Like you said, it doesn't mean she can't be capable, um, but, she just needed to just bring it up a little bit and bring Daniel Craig up out of it.
Mhm. Yep.
So yeah, kudos to Ana de Armas for that.
Yep. Um, I want to talk a little bit because we kind of gone through what they mean, our general thoughts on the films or whatever. But like, if we can, let's talk a little bit about the theme of the film, and just I put, like I started writing the quote like "Road to Hell." "Road to Hell is paved with good
Mm.
intentions." So just
Oh,
with
sure.
the idea that this is on M. This is a
Mm.
secret project. It's oh, it was never designed for this kind of thing. When it's pointed out, it could be used for mass genocide and all this stuff. Um, and then you get the dilemma at the end, like, do I do this? Do I fix my mistake at the expense of my terrible mistake being exposed? So it's
Mhm.
a good character moment for him. But then also just a debate, I guess, like where is the line for good intentions? Where is the
Mhm.
line for this? Like, is it understandable for someone to be like, well, we have this nanotech essentially that we can use to eliminate collateral damage. We
Mhm.
can have very specific targeting, with zero unintended consequences,
Right,
unintended
repercussions, yeah.
deaths and stuff. Yeah. But obviously, that's in the eye of the beholder who wields such great and immense power.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's believable enough for, like the next stage of development of this kind of warfare. Like when you think of where things have already gone and technologies that we already have, like think about, the development of drone strikes. Well,
Mhm.
that was designed to prevent casualties you know, on behalf of like the pilot who doesn't need to be there and doesn't need to, get shot back at and therefore
Yep.
die in whatever strike. So I feel like human nature is always looking towards developing that technology that is going to do like the necessary thing with the least amount of damage.
Yep.
So this felt very believable to me and it felt very real that M developed this like you said, with good intentions. Um, and us in our outrage in the movie, after like it's completely gone awry, we can still feel that outrage, but we also feel, I think, at least for me, that empathy of like, "Gah, I know you thought this was gonna go well, but like, did you really not think like this could fall into the wrong hands? Like,
Right.
oh, were you like naive like that? I don't know. It's really hard because, hindsight is 2020, so of course, us in the movie seeing how badly it all goes, it's like obviously this was always going to go terribly, but, it is at times hard to fault someone for those good intentions. Like I think about Avengers, Age of Ultron, Tony Stark like develops Ultron with this really great intention of, like keeping the peace and like what if, Avengers didn't have to respond to all these threats and, like lives weren't on the line like this and we could stop threats before they start. Terribly, terribly wrong, but the intention there is good.
Well, look at it this way, and this is very obviously very a much more benign example, but when you're um if you have to write a check for something, that's a process. Like it means something because it takes time to write a check. Or if you have to
Mhm,
pay someone in cash, you have to get
mhm,
cash, you see the dollar amounts and you give it to someone. If
mhm,
you have a credit card stored in something and you have a game and you have a bunch of microtransactions available to you, it's really easy to just push a button and buy
mhm,
more and buy more and buy more. It removes all like feeling of consequence. And so
mhm,
part of the issue, and I think they've talked about this in Bond movies as well, is with drone strikes or whatever, when you can push a button
mhm,
and eliminate a life, the consequence isn't there. No one looks that person in the eye to see them die. No one has to risk their own life. No one has to order their own men to go and risk their own life to do this. That sets
mhm,
a threshold of importance on the target, the goal, whatever, the asset, when the stakes must be worth it, the
mhm,
risk. So on the one hand, I completely understand the idea of, well, if we can just have robots wage war for us, we can just hit a button and missile strike whoever we feel like, and they're just done without any risk to our own soldiers. And of course, that's easy for someone to say that's not in that risk. Um, the why, of course, that's a benefit.
mhm.
But to me, maybe bigger picture, or at least this is the quandary, is what I've discussed with the impact and the understanding the needing that burden
Mhm.
of consequence to temper your actions.
Yeah. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Um, I mean, this in this movie, I think it gets a little bit convoluted in the sense of like on the one hand, this was developed as like robot nanobot technology that would be this sort of like push a button, these nanobots go like attack whoever their DNA encoded to attack. And then it sort of gets a little bit twisted in the fact that like these people carry nanobots in their skin and like touches end up killing people. So there is a
Right.
weird like still human element of risk. It's so much more minimal than like somebody fighting to get somebody and like shoot them with a
Right.
gun or something. You know what I mean? It's much more casual, but there's still this weird sort of like it's robots, but it's people.
Hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
this movie, I think like starts out with the idea that it is so remote, and then it gets so very personal.
Yep.
And I like that about this movie, but I think that the consequence is lost a little bit. Or the idea that this is being developed and it's a little bit more consequence free or maybe conscience free
Mhm.
because you don't have to send somebody into that much danger, but then it like kind of flips around and
Yep.
we lose that moral dilemma because it does become so personal and consequential for Bond.
Well, and I think that's one element, and the other is in all this stuff. So when we talk about AI or in weapons of mass destruction, whatever it may be, bioweapons, it's um, the from an individual's perspective that you have your own goals and allegiances and whatever. You're like, okay, well, you believe you're in the right, you're doing this thing. And
Mhm.
though what I develop may become could fall in the wrong hands, if I don't do this, someone else that's our enemy is going to do this first because
Mhm.
there is we're not in a echo chamber, we're not in a sandbox with one or two players. When we're on a worldwide scale, there's absolutely going to be people that have ultimate control and no uh like second thoughts hardly on what they're doing and the potential consequences. The goal is to win,
Mhm.
and consequences be damned in a way. So that's to me the question Mallory asks himself or must have is, well, I see the good in this. I see the potential good available here. The way to reduce casualties. Yes, there's a danger, but if we don't do this, if we don't get this tech first, if we don't harness this, we're going to be behind and someone else is going to do it. And it's going to mean the end of us because that's absolutely the world. And that's, I mean, if you listen to certain people, like the idea of whoever gets to general artificial intelligence first runs
Mhm.
the world. So like
Right.
there's those kind of like larger threats to humanity and to civilization that Bond tries to tackle at different points, and to me that's where this goes,
Mhm.
and why I can sympathize, and it makes it a difficult decision. Like,
Yeah.
fundamentally I kind of reject the idea that anyone or any entity should wield such power,
Mhm.
but I also am in the real like a realist in the terms that if someone there are people out there that if they can, they absolutely will.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's so funny because in in thinking along those lines, like you basically end up developing that technology for the very people you're trying to keep it from. As this
Yes.
movie very adeptly points out, like if M hadn't been of that mindset and like, well, somebody else is going to develop it, so we better develop it first. It it may have been years before it was actually developed.
Yep.
Um but instead M like pushes that cycle forward and then just like sort of serves it up on a silver platter for Remy Malek's Safin to steal and be
Yep.
like, "Cool, thanks. Totally appropriated this. Really
Yep.
fits in with what exactly my plans are, so thank you for
Yep.
developing that, and I didn't have to do the work."
Yep. So in this complicated issue that can be spanned across many things in
Mhm.
life and in the future to come, can we say that the best course of action is one of a preventative nature instead? So as opposed to like, well, it's inevitable, this crazy technology is going to happen, this crazy powerful tech, maybe our resources are better spent at preventing our enemies from developing said tech. Everybody spies on everybody to try to figure out what they're capable of, what
Mhm.
technologies you're developing. Maybe, like you said, maybe that this kind of technology in this universe would have been very far off had they
Mhm.
not like kind of found the way and pushed that forward and funded it.
Mhm.
And so maybe just like trying to do what they can to make sure others don't have developed such a thing is a better use of resources. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, um, who knows, like, what sort of funding went into developing this project that could have, like, been aimed at, you know, saying, like, we're entering into an agreement, or, like, saying above board that we're, not gonna be doing this, and then below board, basically sabotaging anybody, or,
Yeah,
slapping
right.
sanctions on, like, an
That's what
organization
the
or a
double O's
country
are
that, like,
for.
does. That's a what?
Yeah, that's what the double O's are for. You
Yeah,
send them in, oh, they're
exactly,
developing this
exactly,
thing, yeah, yeah,
right? So, yeah, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, this is, like you said, road to hell paved with good intentions. I mean, Mallory was obviously trying to do what was in his mind a good thing, and, minimize, personal casualties for his double O's,
yep,
and ended up costing a great deal more than he ever thought possible.
yep. Um, so I actually did like Rami Malek's character quite a bit. I could have used a little more time with his motivations
Mhm.
personally. I think that was probably the biggest thing missing, as opposed to just someone that's, I understood why he wanted to take out Spectre. That made sense. But beyond that,
Yeah, and
um,
then
you know,
I
yeah,
MI6 and Bond, and
yep.
yeah.
That's what I don't understand.
Yeah, I mean, when I say I was disappointed with Remy Malek's villain, I don't mean that I was disappointed with Remy Malek per se, but I just didn't feel it like his character was fully developed. I felt again that he was a great actor underutilized,
Sure.
in
Yep.
terms of being given a story, much like Christoph Waltz. I did love, speaking of, loved his appearance in this movie. It was great.
It's a lot better
Like,
than the previous one, yes.
yes. Um, I mean, it was both like a great plot advancement and something obviously that was like, oh my, there he is again. This is a little
Mhm.
callback for, Bond's tenure, um, or for Craig's tenure. So yeah, so I love um that moment in the film. But yeah, I just felt like I needed more out of Remy Malek's villain for him to be like
Sure.
one of the great ones, I guess. I mean, he was fine.
Sure.
He just, when I think of like Bond villains, he's not ranked in my top 5.
Sure. So, why do you think that this film was was met with such a cool reception for many? We see again on Metacritic it's sitting at a 68.
Mhm.
So that's
That actually surprises
better.
me.
Yeah, it's better than Spectre and definitely better than
Mhm.
Quantum of Solace, but
Mhm.
solidly behind Skyfall and Casino Royale.
Yeah, it's funny because when you look at it, in general, I would agree with, like, the rankings that these scores place these films at. Like Skyfall number 1,
Sure,
Casino Royale number 2, No Time to Die, not kill, at number 3, and then Spectre, Quantum of Solace. Overall, that's how I would rank Daniel Craig's films as Bond. Um, but it does surprise me that No Time to Die isn't, like, doesn't have a higher score.
sure.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think because it was divisive on, it being so fan servicey to Craig. I think some people
Hmm.
felt that that really worked and really enjoyed it, and some people didn't. Like, from the reviews I've read from critics, um, one critic was like, "Yeah, if I just imagine this as, like, we're just, like, giving Daniel Craig a movie, I really enjoyed it. If I
Hmm.
thought of it as, like, a separate movie in and of itself, I didn't like it."
Interesting.
And then another critic um thought that like everything was really well paced, like the storyline was spot on, but it was like performance wise not his favorite, like the actual actors
What?
themselves. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
it's
like very divisive opinions, very like all over the map. It was really hard to read this one.
I think it was honestly the the previous film being generally considered a disappointment, and
Mhm.
then the long waits for this one. So I think it was just I mean, again, for me, I think it helped because my expectations were lower. But
Sure.
maybe for other people, they just were maybe they're already kind of done with this iteration of Bond, you know?
Mhm.
And the drawn out release schedule. I don't know. I didn't find a lot to not like,
Mhm.
short of a couple motivations. There's a lot of emotional elements, and yeah, there were callbacks, but nothing was nothing was cringy or on the nose or really like
Mhm.
blatant fan service.
Nothing
Like
felt
the
shoehorned in there, yeah.
yeah, the puns made sense without it being too like wink wink.
Mhm.
And who's going to complain about like the classic cars? And I just the theme, the musical elements, I don't know, I just
Great
don't know what.
settings.
Yeah, I don't think the cinematography is quite as good as the previous two, but I still very much enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, I don't get it. And then like the reveal of the child,
Mhm.
Bond having a kid, I thought that was pretty cool.
Be honest, did
So
you never not think she was his kid?
no, I'm
Like,
like,
I
I
really
think
did. I was like, "She's his."
I put in the comments, ooh, a child. Um, assuming, okay, it's like the right age and all that stuff. So yeah, it didn't ring true that like so shortly after they split that she would have just all of a sudden gotten pregnant.
Right,
Or even during, that would have been, or something like that, because just the timing fit, that
right.
way. So, um, yeah, and again, love Lea Sedol, so,
Mhm.
um
What, I mean, this is kind of the biggest, I think, plot element that we haven't gotten to yet. What did you think of the
yeah.
new 007?
Oh, okay. I mean, I didn't like her at first because she's her kind of her foil, or really, it's like the feeling threatened, I guess, probably
Mhm.
is the idea. What are you doing back here, old timer?
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, I came to like her, and I thought the little kind of showdown again in Cuba made sense. Was fun to get to see her kind of face off and how that went, and then the how she came to respect him. She
Yes.
understood like what he was going through, what he's lost, what he has um at stake, and said, hey, he should take his 007 status back. And then they worked well together at the end. I thought
Mhm.
I thought it was she was a good addition to MI6.
I agree. I really thought all of that kind of tracks with human interaction generally. I mean, when you
Hmm.
think like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I've taken over. I've earned this spot. What are you doing coming back here?" Like you feel threatened by things like that. I felt like they played that well. Again, like we're resurrecting Bond, kind of from a retirement and bringing him back into MI6 and bringing him back into the fold. But we've got like these new ways of doing it, and having a new 007 you know, was a really great way to, like, bring him back in, but also, like, kind of keep him at arm's length for a little bit and,
Yeah.
like, create that, tension of, you know, is he really coming back? Is he really not? Like, is there a place for James Bond, at MI6 anymore? Are we really moving on, you know? And is this the future? And yeah, then like you said, kind of resolving that through the movie, um, the two characters working well together and going on that like
Yep.
final mission. I thought that was a really great job.
Yep. So we have to, of course, talk about the
The
biggest
biggest,
spoiler.
biggest.
Yeah. Um, James Bond dies. So we have to, and
Yeah,
I thought maybe they would leave like some room for question, when it was like looking grim,
me too.
but they did not. They
No.
absolutely, I mean, he was engulfed.
Yes.
So I think normally I think it speaks to how good the film is that I was okay with this.
Yeah, you weren't upset.
Um, yeah, because I mean, for the story, it makes sense. And,
Mhm.
there are things that when you have a perpetual series that, this is 25th official film, since 1962, um, there's, you run into those things where you don't have any emotional impact if some dramatic things don't happen. And
Mhm.
so Craig calling it quits on his run, and this Bond, seeing an end. I don't know, it fit. It was emotional for
Mhm.
um, you know, his love and his now known child and for everyone else there. But it's kind
Mhm.
of unrealistic as well for the world's greatest double O to never, to live to old age,
Mhm.
uh, so I don't know. How did this resonate with you?
Yeah, I thought I was going to be more upset about it, and I was upset in a, um, I can't believe he died kind of way. It's such a tragic circumstance, um, you know, to have been reunited and met a child, um, only to be, obviously horrifically torn from them. Um,
Mhm.
but it makes sense because how would we move forward
Yes.
with any sort of storyline that way? How would we move
Yep.
forward, um, with a child that and a love that he could never see? How would we move forward with like knowing James Bond as a dad? Like, would we in the back of our minds knowing that and knowing he continues to be a double O feel like he should be holding back somehow because he's a parent? Would there be
Right.
some, I don't know. I think there's always something when people are parents that, you think like, you should be more careful because you have a child to
Right.
live for and you have to like protect them. I don't think James Bond is as effective that way. So, yeah, it really made sense at the end of this. It was like beautiful emotional stakes. Um, it was great because, they gave us that tease of hope that he was getting off the island, mission success, great job. Just kidding, you
Yep.
know, one last final twist and he has to stay. So yeah, all around this really made sense. And I think Chris and I, when we were talking about it afterwards, it felt very satisfying because it felt like a clean slate to take a break. We don't, I mean, Bond is now dead. We don't have to rush into a new film. We don't have to rush into a new recasting. We can take some time, maybe some, real extended time to think about what's next.
Yep.
Because that is one thing that the film did do is, um, promise that James Bond will return,
Yep. Right.
and it very
Yep.
specifically said James Bond, not 007, which I
Right.
think is a very telling clue about, you know, talk about 007 being rebooted. as a woman, as a different character. Obviously, we were introduced to a 007 in this movie, but I think that ending title card makes it very clear that she's not going to be James Bond 007.
Right. Yep. Yeah, so that's the question, I mean, well, firstly, would it have been satisfying for him to get away and drive off into the sunset with his woman and child, and then we have our cut. Daniel Craig's gone, it's whatever, and break. Would that have been I mean, obviously we don't have the emotional impact of the
Mhm.
loss, the tragedy. So that takes something away.
Yeah.
But you do end on a happier note that adds something. I don't know. Ultimately, I don't know which is better, but I think that I don't know. Whereas I maybe would have expected this to really upset me, I was okay with it because of the how it contributed
Mhm.
to the drama. And it also helps knowing that at this point in time, they don't have any intention of just like, well, okay, James Bond's dead. We're just gonna do something else now. It's
Mhm.
gonna be 007 and not him.
Mhm.
Um, knowing that helps as well. That
Mhm.
they're not just throwing away the character, they're
Mhm.
throwing away a section. They're closing a
Right.
chapter with this
Right.
character because it made me think about you know how Bond is set up, and it's kind of a freeing thing where everything else is always like, how does this fit into the canon? Where does this go time wise? How is all this stuff? Bond is kind of whatever.
Yeah.
The only chronology that really matters for this is Daniel Craig's run.
Mhm.
That's it. It's kind of a self-contained. The rest of the Bond things, yeah, there's callbacks and nods and stuff like that. It's like it happened, but kind of didn't
Yeah,
because
they're
it's
callbacks to people, they're callbacks to things, like hallmarks of James Bond, but they're not callbacks to events.
right.
You know what I
Yep.
mean? It's not like they're walking around being like, "Hey, remember this gold bar we picked up from Goldfinger?" Like, you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
not like that kind of reference. So like you said, the Daniel Craig era is really self-contained. It just nods
Yep.
to hallmarks of the franchise rather than specific moment.
Yep. Like it's there's no previous James Bond film in on Your Majesty's Secret Service, James
Mhm.
Bond does get married, and then
Yep.
she immediately dies. There's obviously no
Y
reference to that. It does not fit into Daniel Craig's timeline or anything like that at all. Like, and I just think that's kind of what keeps the series fun and allows them to be inventive, you know,
Mhm.
because how can you not after so many years? You can't pigeonhole yourself like that.
Right.
So where do you think they go? Who does some people stay? How do you what do you th I mean, what's next? I know people have talked about maybe spin-off, so maybe James Bond will return, but maybe there is a spin-off that
Mm.
focuses on, um, the 007 we meet in here or something like that. There's been talks for a long time about doing a young James Bond series, like a TV series.
N
Um,
no, thank you.
yeah, I'm
That's my
I'm
first
opposed to all of these things. I'm
Yeah,
opposed to all of them. I just
I agree.
I want a break. I want a
Yep.
like you say, a meaningful break,
Yep.
and then let's just come back with you know, with more of the same, but in a fresh way,
Yes.
which is going to be tough, but
Yeah, I mean, it's hard because I am attached to some of the characters, um, but that
because they
doesn't
keep them.
mean yeah, I mean, that doesn't mean they can't keep them. I mean, obviously, like, John Cleese, Judi
Yep.
Dench, I mean, they spanned
Yep.
multiple double O's. Um, so yeah, so I mean, I would not be sad to see Ben Whishaw come back as Q. I wouldn't be sad for Naomi Harris to come back as Moneypenny. Um, Ray Fiennes, I don't know. I mean, he was looking a little on the older side in No Time to Die, so I don't know. I
I
could like
think that was a call to a reminder of the original M.
yeah,
Like,
I do, but I just mean like it would be harder for me to see him come back depending on some length of time, you know.
mhm,
Like if
maybe.
we're waiting like another 6 to 8 years, I feel like I don't know. I would
He's just
like
older and more
put that on
stately.
pause.
He's more wizened, you know?
I mean,
Um,
M's always older, but he's not like, your grandpa. So
I mean,
there's a line there.
Look at Ray Fiennes in The King's Man.
I know.
Doesn't look too old to me. I think this was a apparel stance. He kinda did the Winston Churchill kind of,
Sure.
like, lean back. He's just like,
Sure.
I don't know, it just felt like they almost aged him up,
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
purpose. Maybe they're
Ray
making
Fiennes
him
is one
drink
of those like
more.
yeah, Ray Fiennes is one of those like people that I never actually know how old he is. He looks like he could be 40 for like 20 years. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like I'm not actually sure how old he is. Oh, he's 59. Okay. So yeah,
Okay.
he still looks like he
Yeah.
could be in his 40s, but like, if you wait another 8 years, 10 years to make a movie, like you might be pushing it a little bit.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I don't go ahead.
but yeah, I was just going to say like I I want now that Daniel Craig has died, I really want a
Daniel Craig's
fresh
died?
sorry, Daniel Craig's
Oh my
Bond is
god.
what I was starting to
Another
say.
one?
2022, why? Um Now that Daniel Craig's Bond has died, I really do want, like, a fresh new start. It felt like to me that the closing of this, um I preferred it to him, like, driving off into the sunset, you know, living happily ever after. I felt like the emotional impact of this, I felt it both for the character and for Daniel Craig in the sense of, like, we all just, like, breathed a sigh of release, like, "Ugh, it's done. He's released. There's no way he could come back." Like, I just felt this, like, weight off of all of our chests because Daniel Craig has had so much, like, emotional baggage around Bond.
Right.
So I feel like it would behoove them to carry none of that forward and just wait, total reboot a ways into the future. Do not do a TV series about young Bond. I don't even know what that would be, and ugh,
No.
yuck.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't mind seeing this 007, and I forget the actress's name, so I apologize for that, but I really liked her. I wouldn't mind seeing her in an action movie, but I don't need to see her as 007. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am
Okay.
happy to watch her. She's great. She did a fantastic job. Um, it's a very delicate balance to Lashana Lynch, thank you. It's a very delicate balance to step into, however briefly, a very beloved character's shoes and sort of assert yourself because you can get that fan backlash. She did it very well. The character was well written. So, yeah, go off, go star in another action movie. Just like, don't let's have a spin-off. So many
Right.
things have spin-offs, and I don't need spin-offs of James Bond.
Yeah. So I think I'm okay with a couple routes. I'd be okay with the route you suggest where we're just like basically complete reboot, all new people, um, fresh start. I would also, I think, be okay with a lot of the returning characters. We can still need the break, we still need the pause, but
Yes,
so it feels familiar. We have an attachment to it's not, you know, if we have an attachment to what's come before, but it can still feel different.
sure.
And we can kind of just ignore what's come before, even though we have familiar faces. My concern is just how far do they take the idea of freshness new idea. Because I mean, we have some big swings sometimes. So when we go
Mm,
from Sean Connery, he starts getting sillier and stuff, but then we go to Roger Moore and it really goes off the deep end, and then we kind of whiplash back to a more serious Timothy Dalton.
yeah.
And they kind of ease into it with Living Daylights, and then it gets more serious in License to Kill. But um, where does this next thing go? I'm just,
Mhm.
you know, I think that ultimately, uh, the family here has done a good job of stewarding the franchise over so many years. So I can't think that they don't stand a good chance of continuing that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm worried about what's to come. So ultimately, I think I'm just gonna sit and be happy that I was happy with this one. So
Mhm. Yeah, it was a well done, pardon the language pun, swan song, for Daniel Craig. Um, yeah, and it was a very satisfying catharsis for this series to end the way it did. Um, I I mean, there's always like a part of me that doesn't or does regret that like he couldn't have gone out on something as strong as Skyfall, but I think this was miles better than going out on something like Spectre. So I'm
yep,
ultimately glad this movie got made to pay tribute to an actor who did a really great job shepherding Bond into,
the
our
21st
era,
century.
our
Yeah,
our 21st century. Yeah.
yeah. Alan says full name Ralph Nathaniel Twilston Wickham Fines. Is it not Rafe Fiennes?
It's Rafe, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I've heard
But it's
like
it's
from
spelled that
people's.
way. It's spelled
Okay,
like Ralph, but it's
okay,
pronounced
yeah,
Rafe.
okay, yeah. So I thought. Um,
Yeah. Thank you for phonetics.
yeah.
Can you provide
Well, I want to
phonetics on
end.
the whole name? Because
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I
know
need some
John
help
was
with some of
taking a
those other
guess,
ones.
and I didn't have any better
Yeah.
ones.
Well, I want to end on the
Twistleton?
quote of which I respect greatly,
Mm,
despite the writer of the quote. The proper
mm.
function of a man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. Jack London. And M, of course, read that at the end,
Mhm.
and I approve this quote. I might put it as my new email, like ending signature. But
Mhm.
yeah, so that's James Bond. That's Daniel Craig's run. It really does feel like in the end of an era.
Mhm.
I'm glad I got to finally watch it and we got to talk about it.
Mhm. Me too.
So I'm excited to get
Bef
more people's opinions on it.
Before we sign off, I have to know officially on air, so it's on record. Where does Daniel Craig sit in your roster of Bonds?
Yeah, I don't know. It's really tough.
I
It's really
know,
tough.
I know.
Um, you know, I think for what he's brought to the franchise, he has to be my favorite
Okay.
because I really like Timothy Dalton, but he didn't
Mhm.
have enough of a chance,
Sure.
you know. 2 films, one of them was a little goofy, the next one very good. Yeah, he just didn't have enough of a chance. Um, Pierce Brosnan, I absolutely love because, I mean, he wasn't the first Bond I saw, but I really connected with him. I
Mhm.
really like how cool he is. It didn't hurt that he had such a great opening film to come
Mhm.
in with. Goldeneye is just classic. It is so good.
Agreed.
Um, being right across from Sean Ben, I'm gonna say Ben. We're gonna go along with your
Bean Ben.
interpretation. Yeah. Um, and all the well, I could go on and on, but that and then Sean Connery is the original, so like they all a lot have a lot of strengths. But I think the acting weight that Craig brings, the care that despite his like frustrations with bursting into being a household name and some
Mhm.
of the whatever, I think the care that he brought to the film, wanting to work with Sam Mendes to begin with. I guess,
Mhm.
in this little documentary, the way it was written in the script, the shower scene in Casino Royale was
Mm.
like, was very different, and she was supposed to be in there in her underwear and stuff like that, and he like, brought the emotional element of, no, like, she's in shock. She's just in her
Mhm.
clothes
Right.
sitting there. We're both staying there. It's just like a moment that's really beautiful that,
Mhm.
like, he brought that wasn't gonna be that way initially. So I think
Mhm.
all those things, having a Bond that a lot of people have said is closer to the books, a little more
Mhm.
brutal, a little more to the
Mhm.
point, I think means something as well.
Mhm.
And, 3 of the 5 films being really good. So,
Mhm.
your pick is still Connery, yes?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It is. So I've thought a lot about though who ranks elsewhere. And if you would ask me purely on looks and austerity, I would pick Pierce Brosnan. Like you said, also
Sure.
does not hurt having just such a cool opening film. Goldeneye to
Yeah,
me is just classic Bond done in all the
yeah,
right ways. Killer song, fabulous villain. Again, a Bond shadow self that like feels so real in the way
yeah,
that um Javier Bardem's Raul Silva does.
mhm,
Like that's just such a great haunting figure, and those two actors like do that so well. That Bond shadow self. Um, but like you said, in terms of like films, in terms of like acting gravitas, in terms of like excellent plot lines happening, Daniel Craig is second for me. Like overall, if I had to like,
mhm,
choose a second Bond based on more than looks, and demeanor, it would be Daniel Craig. Sean Connery to me, there's something about him being like the OG, the original. I think there's something about like the films themselves as well. Um, just there's like a much more feeling of possibility at the time
mm,
of like, you know, of like it doesn't need to be so complicated to be a spy. And I like that about those films. Like everything feels very real, just very normal, like, yep, hopping a train, going across Europe, spying on different organizations. Like everything just feels like, yeah, you could absolutely do this. Whereas like in the 21st century, it's so much more complicated and so much more involved to be a spy. Do I think Daniel Craig does that really well? Absolutely, I do. But it feels like you need more and more in the ways of like technology help to do what James
mhm.
Bond does. So I just like
Con
the simplicity of the Connery era.
and Connery was such a brilliant cast because,
He really was.
you know, he and this is something that the producers have like stuck by, and I think he epitomizes the men want to be him, women want to be with him. It's kind of one of those
Mhm.
things like he's kind of the guy that can get anything done. He's kind of no F's given. He just makes it easy.
Mhm.
He gets what he wants. He's like broad-shouldered and hairy and just like a man.
Mhm.
And women are like, "Yeah, you can smack my ass. I'm good with this." Like, it's he just sells it. He really does a good job of bringing that I mean, he's if he had been different, it would have been the type of Bonds we saw with, like, Jimmy Bond and the other
Right,
iterations they attempted to adapt the books. He brought a
right,
personality and a machismo and a whatever to the role that defined Bond for, for everyone for decades
right.
to come. So,
Right. Yeah, I think yeah, that's essentially what I'm drawn to in his portrayal is like the fact that like his charm, his personality is what makes a lot of this happen. It's not so much on gadgetry. There's still like cool
yeah.
gadgetry, like don't get me wrong, but like the fact that like he makes things happen. He's the one like using his charm, his wits to do things. Like I like that down to earth part of like being a spy, being James Bond.
Yep.
So I just like that about the films.